So do you want to show everyone
Sure.
the comic?
Definitely.
Awesome. Tell us about the title page, Rowan.
So basically the title page was the last thing that I created because neither of us really knew what we wanted to call it or anything to do with that. And I had no idea what kind of imagery I wanted to have for the title until I'd finished the entire comic. And in creating the comic, I decided to do this kind of like symbolic representation with a window, and that's a repeated image throughout the entire comic. And so when I finally finished all the content pages, to me it made complete sense to make the title page a window that was open just a little crack, which adds like intrigue to people and for people, and creates like a solid visual that doesn't give away too much of what's going on in the comic, but also is a little bit of like a draw into the symbolism within it.
I have to acknowledge Jenny Heyman here. She just completed a dissertation related to open educational resources in Ontario, and part of her research looked at action verbs. And so she was focusing on the gerund. The day that you were pressing me to like finally commit to a title, I listened to a webinar where she summarized her research experience. And so the opening as an action verb comes definitely from her dissertation work, as well as just that wanting to convey that this is something in progress. It's happening, it's emerging, it's not finished by any means. And so I think we landed in a good spot.
I think so too, and it suits the title page really well because you see the window is actually opening a little bit, and so it ties in really well. And then I also pressed you to have like a tagline for it because like as opening is a good title, it doesn't really tell anybody what the comic is about, and so we went back and forth quite a bit on creating that tagline.
We wordsmithed it.
Yeah.
We got there. I feel like the rest of the story flowed a little bit easier, I think. So the first content page really focuses on my hope for university education as an undergrad, and then a little bit of disillusion that came with the feedback I was receiving, as well as the huge costs of textbooks. And so do you want to speak to how you conveyed that through imagery?
Yeah, so I decided to go with the whole comic to be like a monochromatic sepia tone, and decided to have just certain colors be accent colors. And so in this page, which is like a multi-panel page, I decided red to be the accent color because although the first couple panels are really positive, the truth of the matter was it was kind of depressing and a little bit shocking for you, and it wasn't what you expected. And so having red as the color, especially when it comes to like the feedback on your paperwork, it really hones in on like how not great that experience was for you.
Absolutely. And what I liked about this is you illustrated, but you also included the text. Like, you wrote this text. For much of the comic, you wrote and illustrated based on the narrative I had provided you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like your voice is really prominent in this story for me, which I love, because I feel like we kind of all go through this process of thinking it's going to be one thing and then learning that actually it's a bit different than what our expectations were. But nonetheless, I was inspired, and I love page 2 because all of the critical theory that I was exposed to really did feel like it was flying all around me in that time, and you convey it so well. It's a really colorful page when I look at it.
Yeah, so with this page, because of like the monochromaticity of the entire comic and everything, I would describe these kinds of full panel pages as like an enlightened page. And so that's why I decided to do full color for them. So it looks like it's more vibrant, it looks like it has more action to it, and like it's more involved. And so you carry the colors in the page, take your eye around everything, and encourage you to like read all the like handwritten notes that would theoretically be stuff that Jess was writing at that time, and really kind of involve yourself in the page.
then we kind of fast forward to my time as an adjunct faculty member. So my first experience teaching, which again, I thought was going to be this amazing dream job. But then I landed in, this is like true to life, and a corner office shared by about a dozen other faculty, sandwiched between the gymnasium and the weight room. And I love how you captured the emotions I experienced in that space, and then also kind of being indoctrinated into the expectations of the teaching profession. So there I was giving the same feedback, and you used just that little bit of red to convey that image, right?
So again, on like this multi-panel page, because it wasn't the positive experience that you thought it was going to be, that's why I used the same color red again. And so in the first panel, you see it as the poster on the wall that says, like, you know, caution, weight room above, and then going back to you marking up papers and actually using that red ink that discouraged you so much in the first like pages of the novel. And we see again like the window in that panel, which is like just a quick little reminder that it's the same situation, like it's the same room that you've been in as all the previous pages within the comic. And then that last panel of all your students doing the exact same thing that you did, I thought was a great little tidbit as well.
Absolutely. A little bit heartbreaking, but a really great image. And then we fling that window open. So can you speak to this second to last page that's so powerful?
Yeah, so in this one, this is when I was actually illustrating and creating the comic and the imagery between it. This is when I really realized I could use that window as symbolism and a really strong symbolic image. And so in this enlightened full page panel, I have you opening the window and then all of these elements of open swirling around you as though like it's a breath of fresh air. And the colors that I chose in this are, you know, teals and light blues and oranges and like yellow ochres, which to me represent like positivity and hope and change. And so that's why I picked those colors to have, and then I associated those colors throughout the rest of the comic when it comes to open. And also with the window opening, you see the pages that are on your desk flying around, and it's just like, it's literally almost a cleansing image of you like starting a new chapter.
I noticed too that the text changed to cursive.
Yeah.
That's probably strategic.
Yeah, because I thought that cursive, like the script type kind of is flowing and it looks kind of like it could be coming out of the window. It looks like it's part of the wind, and it just kind of flows really well, and it changes from the stark regular text that we were using prior to the discovery of open to a more lively and elegant version of that, something more approachable, something more positive.
The other thing we haven't spoken too much about is the strategic placing of me. Like, it's my story, but you don't really see my face too much.
Yeah.
I really liked when we had our initial consult, when you had some roughed up sketches, that was going to be your approach, because even though this is my story, it's a shared and common story. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really impactful and strategic on your part.
Yeah, it definitely was, because if, as somebody who's reading or a viewer to anything, if you don't see someone's face, then you can subconsciously put yourself into that character's position. And so that's why throughout the entire comic, you don't really see any facial features except for maybe your nose.
Yep. Then we get into me doing open for the first time. This is basically a snapshot summary of my year as an open education fellow. One of the major components being attending OE Global in the Netherlands, first trip to Europe, first global open education conference, and I definitely came home feeling like I needed to tell this story on campus, which is what we did. Do you want to talk artistically about this panel?
I think that most of what I have to say on it is just the carry through of those same colors from the previous page, where you see those teals and oranges. So in this page as well, because it is open education, relevant to open education, that's where we see the same tones that were in the previous image, which works out really nicely because the Cambrian College Open Day that you guys had was branded as an orange.
That's right.
So,
which is kind of a throw to the OE Consortium and Open Education Week's branding. So the orange and teal actually signifies open in a more like international context too, in a way. But I love the little nod to Open Day, because that's one of the first times we talked officially about open education on campus, and we're coming up to that just under a year ago now. So this is all really new, but it already feels a bit nostalgic, so that was cool.
And then also on this page, we see you again at that same desk, but the window is now just open and there's no more paper in front of you. It's actually a laptop, and you've got Post-it notes next to you, and so it's a nod to the fact that like it is a new chapter of your life. And it also features my favorite panel in the whole comic, which is that airplane one. It's my favorite one.
Neat. I might have a different association having to be stuck on that airplane for 10 hours straight. But it's a cool look. And then the final panel here doesn't have me in it, actually. So this was one that I really loved. Like, I think of all of the panels, this is my favorite concluding page, because it talks about how open education now it's not about me. It's everyone can get involved, and really it's just a matter of leaning in, finding out, and trying.
Yeah.
So I think you captured that really well in these random, I'm assuming you think they're faculty, huddled around the Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub's kitchen. You also prominently displayed an award that we won for sharing our Open Day content at the Technology Enabled Seminar and Showcase this past November. So our team won an award for inspiring others around Ontario for potentially holding their own open days. So that's quite symbolic for me. But artistically, what were you hoping to achieve in this final panel?
With this final panel, what I was really trying to do is focus on the people, which is kind of like what I gathered from this whole comic. Is it's about the people and what people can do in this situation. And so that's why all the people are in color, because they're the elements that should be focused upon. And also that's why the award is in color, because it's kind of like a validation of like the wonderful things that you as a team are doing. And so that's why it's front and center in color. Everything else is still the monochromatic, but the people are in color. And I tried to, make the people look as like different and coming from like different areas as possible, because like anybody can really do it if they really want to.